Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. First of all, I just wanted to show off my sweater that I got the other day. It says, "Why are you so obsessed with me?" It's a Mean Girls sweater. If you are a fan of Girl World on YouTube, you know what this is. If not, just ignore me. Trust me, you don't want to fall down the rabbit hole. Anyway, so today I wanted to do a video talking a little bit more about some of the things I've gone through in the past. It's hard for me to bring up things I've gone through arbitrarily because I feel like unless someone specifically asks me these questions and is prepared for the full answer, it just doesn't come up naturally. And it's not something that's easy to talk about, especially if it was difficult to go through or it was during a time in your life where you just felt really unsure of yourself, or maybe you were going through a lot of depression and you were struggling with addiction, whatever it is. But today's video, I wanted to talk about one of my Psychward stays at the mental hospital. I have been hospitalized inpatient twice. I'm really trying not to make it 3 times. Yeah, but I have been hospitalized twice for inpatient. The first one was a pretty good experience. The second one wasn't. So today I want to talk about my first psych ward experience. So I just wanted to preface this with saying that when I did go to the mental hospital and this happened to me, I was not someone who had ever been aware of what a psych ward was. I didn't know that there were hospitals just for mental health. I was not aware of any of this. I had never heard of it before. When I was a teenager and I was struggling really bad with self-harm, I remember kind of opening up to my mom about it after a while, and I didn't grow up in a very supportive home. I grew up in a very abusive home, and so I didn't get a lot of support from my mom. But when I did tell her about it, something that she really drilled into my mind was, you cannot tell anybody that you're doing this to yourself, because if you tell a doctor, if you tell a therapist that you're experiencing self-harm, self-injury, they're going to lock you up and they're not going to let you out. And so I was taught that from a very young age, that you don't give this information freely to a healthcare professional, mental health professional, because the consequences are that they're going to lock you away like prison and throw away the key. And so I was absolutely gut-wrenchingly terrified to tell anybody that I was doing this to myself. It was very, very secret. Very few people knew, maybe 2 people knew. And it was just a very shameful secret that I hid. I was very, 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 very scared of getting locked up over this. And so obviously I didn't have the correct perception. I didn't look into it myself, and I just never really thought about it. So that's just kind of the preface, this whole thing. In 2019, I was at the peak of my alcohol abuse at that time. I was drinking when I didn't want to drink. I was getting withdrawals every not late afternoon, maybe like 2 o'clock, about 2 o'clock every single day. I would still be at work. I would experience horrific withdrawal pain, and I would just have to either push through until the end of the day, or more likely than never, I was leaving work early. I was canceling responsibilities. And it was just really sad because there were people who were relying on me, and I couldn't be there for them in the amount of time that they needed. So I was at the peak of my alcohol abuse. I was extremely depressed. My family's small and it's kind of broken. It's kind of like Lilo and Stitch. If you've seen that movie, when they say that, that's how my family is. My family has been split apart. Everyone kind of has their own little group, and they don't talk to each other. They don't get along. They're just very unforgiving, angry people over things that have happened a long, long time ago, and it's always just been that way. So I was going through this depressive episode where I was abusing alcohol, I was abusing drugs. I won't really get into that too much, but I was unable to cope with the fact that there were family members who I missed and I couldn't get a hold of them. I didn't know where they weren't reaching out to me. And that part of my story runs so much deeper than I care to get into, but if you've ever had someone you love and care about and you don't know where they're at and you don't know if they're okay, and that fear that eats away at you, calling their number, texting them, looking to see if maybe they're in a jail somewhere, are they in a hospital somewhere, or are they even alive? I mean, it was really, really hard. And I wasn't very happy in my personal life. I was struggling with an eating disorder, a restrictive eating disorder. I was not diagnosed with anorexia at this time, so for me it was just a, eating disorder is what I called it. But I was very unhappy. And so one night I was really struggling. I was drinking and I was just hurting so bad. And what I chose to do was I chose to reach out to my mom. Now, back in these days, my mom was not someone who understood how to help me. She's never really been good at understanding mental health, and she finds it rather embarrassing. And so she feels embarrassed for me, is what she's told me. When I explain how I feel to her, she says it's just embarrassing, and she tries not to give it a lot of attention. But that night I was lonely, desperate, broken, drunk, and high. And what I did is I reached out to her over text. We don't really talk on the phone. But I texted her and I said, "Mom, I think I have a problem with drinking." That's all I said. And she ignored me. Later on, she ended up telling me, I asked her, "Why did you ignore me that night when I asked you for help?" And she said, "Oh, well, I just felt embarrassed for you, so I didn't think you'd wanted me to reply." What? So, that's my life. It's fun. So, whatever. So, that night, I messaged her. I was desperate. I was really, really, I don't ask for help. So, when I was asking someone like her to see me, I was desperate. And I had no friends. I'm not trying to give you a pity party, but I'm trying to explain what led up to me getting to this point where I needed to be hospitalized. So I had no friends. I was very unhappy, eating disorder, drinking, using drugs, just very deeply unhappy. And I ended up causing myself self-injury. I know I did it because I have glimpses of grabbing a pair of scissors. That's all I'm gonna say. And the next thing I remember was waking up on the floor, and it's very traumatizing to recall, but someone found me and patched me up as best as they could. It was really bad. Sorry. And again, I didn't ask for help. We didn't go to the hospital. We didn't do anything because I was petrified of a professional knowing that I was doing this to myself. But it got to a point where I had never hurt myself like that before. It was really bad. And the fact that I was almost blackout when I was doing it was even scarier because I don't remember doing it, but I know I did it. So the next morning, I'm obviously not at work, called out, in pain, hungover, feeling like shit, feeling really sorry for myself. If you're like me, then anytime a relapse occurs, there's a lot of shame. I mean, so much shame I couldn't even function. I was already not functioning very well, but I mean, this stopped me in my tracks. I had never given sobriety much of a thought. I mean, I was trying to cut down, and I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. I could not stay sober. I wanted to quit drinking so bad. I couldn't do it. So I got on my phone. I got on Google. And I typed in the sentence, "I can't stop drinking. I didn't know what else to do. And this ad popped up, or whatever popped up, when I searched that. And they said, trouble with addiction, trouble with alcohol, reach out to us. I'm not one to ask for help. So I reached out and I said, "I can't stop drinking. I can't stay sober. I can't stop hurting myself. I need help." So within a relatively quick amount of time, I would say within the next 24 hours, a woman reached out to me. Her name was Michelle, and she got me on the way. I've talked about this before in a previous video, talking a little bit about my history, so I won't get too deep into it, but I ended up going to a behavioral health hospital. I went willingly. I got a ride, so we drove there, and I waited in that waiting room for hours and hours, and there's people around you withdrawing. There's people around you in psychotic episodes, in horrific mental pain, and it was very hard. It was very hard to be around that for hours. I almost left several times. I can't do this. They're not going to help me. I'm not bad enough. I mean, these people are out of their minds. I'm sitting here quietly, like, I don't need this help. They're not going to help me. They're not going to help me. They're not going to help me. They finally called me up, did the intake. Within hours, I had a room. So it was pretty good. Now, this was a voluntary admission. My second admission was not voluntary. It was considered involuntary. I forget what that's called. It wasn't a 5150. I'm not from California or wherever they do that, but they did have to hold me. So I wasn't like that this time. I was there freely. This place was really nice. I'm not gonna lie. For my first time being in something like this, it was pretty bougie, and they didn't let me go anywhere the first few days because they put you on watch, but it was a really it was a fine experience. I mean, I met some really, really interesting people, mostly women. I didn't really talk to the men at all because, like, I just didn't. But there were a lot of really good women there. There were women there who were court ordered, to a point where their mental health was getting them in trouble. And so I met a lady there who was, court ordered to be there. I had never heard of that before. She was extremely warm and welcoming to me. I mean, just so kind. I was fucking terrified. I'm very shy normally. I had never been away from my house. I had never spent a night away from my husband at the time. We're not together anymore. I was like a child in an adult's body. And so I was absolutely terrified. Now, this was a year before COVID started. So this was 2019. COVID hadn't happened yet. Visitors were allowed, so I was allowed a visitor. I met, a lot of women who were basically at the threshold of realizing that they can't maintain what's happening to themselves. And we had to admit that what we were experiencing was a mental health crisis. And for me and a few other people there, we didn't really want to admit that because we were responsible people. We owned homes, we had jobs, we had a lot of shit going on. I don't have time to be mentally ill. I don't have time to be an addict. I need to get better. And it was, it was hard, but it was the first time in my life that I had been around people who maybe didn't have the same story as me, but felt like their brain was their enemy. That the way they thought and the way they felt about things was catastrophic, and it was all or nothing, and it was deteriorating the quality of their life. And I attended groups. It was really cool. They had groups, and I was a very studious student in school. I'm not bragging. I actually have a learning disability. I'm not the brightest bulb in the box, but I like to learn. I love learning new skills. I love learning fun facts. I like learning. And this was the first time I had ever been able to be part of this group of people wanting to get better. They were talking about mental health. They were talking about addiction. And they taught me a lot. I had never heard of DBT before, and DBT was really cool. Because if you're like me, where you're either an emotional wreck or you're a very black and white thinker, DBT teaches you to use both. It doesn't say to ignore those things, it says to bring them together. And that was a really cool concept for me at the time because I just never thought of it like that. I'm a very logical person until I'm upset, and then my emotions take over, and there's no getting through to me. And when you have PTSD, like I do, from, I'm just going to say CSA. If you know what that is, then great. If you don't, just Google is free. I had horrific trauma and flashbacks, and it was very hard for me to function. And they would kind of teach you how to conversate with yourself and to get yourself through these moments where you just feel out of control. And I really liked that. I think the only thing I really regret about that is that I didn't stay longer. I was so anxious to get out of there. I didn't want to be there, so I stayed a week. And, a lot of people were encouraging me, you really should stay, you haven't even seen all the activities we do yet. And they did a lot of stuff. They did a lot of cool things. It was a beautiful hospital. It was in a very nice city that I did not live in, but it was in a very wealthy city. And I was extremely lucky to have landed there, of all places. And it was really, really eye-opening. I mean, sometimes I wish I had stayed longer. I think I would have gotten more out of it because, I just feel like I would have gotten more out of it. It's tough though, when you have a full-time job and a mortgage, looking back on it is easy, but when you're in it, you want to go back to work. I mean, I didn't want to lose my job. I was making decent money for what I was doing, and I had a tremendous amount of responsibilities, and I couldn't ask anyone for help. No one in my family was going to be able to help me, and my family doesn't understand this kind of stuff, most of them. So they would not have understood why I was there, and I don't think they would have been willing to help. So I ended up leaving, but one of the biggest things I got out of being in a mental hospital was they introduced to me Narcotics Anonymous, and NA is a 12-step program. The point of it is to help get you abstinent from alcohol and drugs, and I had never heard of that before. So because of that hospital, I went to my first ever NA meeting. I didn't even know there were groups for addicts. I just thought I was a shameful piece of shit that had no self-control. And I didn't know there were other people like me, because I was a very problematic drinker. I wasn't like, oh, I go out and have too many. Like, I scared the shit out of people. Like, I would drink, and my mood and my perspective on life got very dark very quickly. I didn't drink around people. I drank alone because of that, because I was pushing people away. And the drink wasn't about having fun anymore, and it never really was. The drink was about coping with big emotions that I just couldn't handle. So I'm just really grateful for that stay. It really opened my eyes. It brought me to the rooms of NA, which eventually brought me to the rooms of AA, and 12 Steps had a big impact on my life. I'm not currently in those programs. I'm not currently working on a sobriety streak right now. I'm just going to be honest, I'm not. But those rooms really, really affected me and changed my life and changed the way that I thought about addiction and the way I thought about myself. It removed a lot of shame from it because I didn't feel so alone anymore. And so it was just good. It was an all-around good stay. I was in pain. What really sucks that I regret the most is that the food there was good. That's not normal, I learned. The food was good. I remember the ladies telling me it's not normal to be in a place like this and have good food. It usually sucks. And I was like, oh, great. And I mean, they had desserts and fresh fruit and veggies and just delicious food. But the problem was I was withdrawing from alcohol and drugs. So did I have an appetite? No. I was currently, struggling with an eating disorder. I don't care. I was eating disorder. Okay, let me just say, I was ready to eat because I didn't care. I wanted to get better. I was so sick of this shit. But I just couldn't, man. It sucked. I mean, it was good cooking. Barely had any of it. Heartbreaking, I know. Terrible. Oh well. Could have been worse. But it was a good experience. I still have all my little notebooks and, supplies and things they give you to help study a lot of this stuff. I ought to probably open them back up and refresh my memory a little bit, considering my life is spiraling out of control. But it was all around good experience. Thank God. My second inpatient stay was nothing like my first, let me tell you. And that is why I don't plan on having a third. It was not fun. So that's just kind of my quick little story. Inpatient stay 1, it was pretty good. Getting home sucked. As soon as I left and I was home, I mean dread that you can just like makes you want to vomit. I mean, just it was really hard to come home. When you go from a really supportive place back to the environment that you got sick in, that is hard. That is hard. And I think it's a big reason why I ended up a year later getting taken back against my will. I mean, I agreed, but there was no choice. I agreed to them forcing me to go. But anyway, that's basically my story. Not a lot of details, I know, I feel bad. If you have any follow-up questions, you know, drop them below. If not, you know, I'd really like to hear about your guys' experience. If you've been inpatient at a behavioral health hospital, I want to know about it. What was your best experience? What was your most nightmare experience, if you feel comfortable sharing it? But really what I want to know is what helped you the most. Is there a habit or something you picked up on that still helps you today? I'd love to know, because I'm always looking for helpful advice. So that's pretty much it for me today, you guys. Sorry, I just love this sweater. I love it. But yeah, that's all I was gonna say. I hope you guys' week has been going well. Winter Olympics 2026. Look it up. There's a lot of cool stuff right now. If you're into sports, if you're into that kind of stuff, I think you'll like it. Anyway, you guys, I better get going. I need to fold my laundry. I'll see you in the next one.